Physician, humanitarian, and best-selling author Khaled Hosseini is here. He has sold millions and millions of copies of his epic novels, which makes him one of the most popular novelists working today. And a humanitarian extraordinaire. You're a goodwill envoy for the United Nations, for refugees. You also have your own foundation.
Yes, yes.
Which does what?
Well, the main idea for me was to reach out to people in Afghanistan who were just like the characters that I've been writing about for 10 years or whatnot. People who were dispossessed, marginalized, people who were sort of vulnerable members of society. And in Afghanistan, that's women and children and the poor. And so the biggest task that we've undertaken with the foundation has been to address the issue of homelessness among refugees, former refugees, Afghans who fled the wars, lived in Iran, Pakistan, the Taliban fell, they said, let's go back home and rebuild our country. They came back to Afghanistan, and it's like, oh my God, it's very difficult to adjust to life there. They're homeless, they live on the streets, they live out in the open, they live in abandoned buildings. And so we fund the building of shelters for those returning refugees.
And learning centers?
Yeah, we have, we give grants to NGOs that build learning centers, that train women in education and in employment. We give grants to NGOs that protect kids in the rug making industry from being exploited. And so we try to...
Exploited how so? Like child labor,
yeah, they work 12, 14,
14
16 hours a day. They don't get to play. They don't get to eat, get proper nutrition. They don't get to go to school. And so there's a wonderful nonprofit there that is working with those kids and trying to... You know,
and educate a girl, change a country.
Yeah, Greg Mortensen is, educate a boy, you educate an individual, educate a girl, and you're educating a community. So, education is very important.
This country might have been a bit of a stretch. Educate a girl, educate a community, and on it goes. Now, this book, And the Mountains Echoed, dedicated to your children, who you say, both the nur of my eyes.
The light.
The light of my eyes, and to your father, who would have been proud.
Yes.
You're sure? Because I know he's gone.
I think so.
Okay.
I think he would have been proud.
And how did your kids inspire And the Mountains Echoed?
Well, I don't know that they directly did, but this book is really kind of focuses on the whole idea of siblingship. This very interesting, powerful, and dynamic relationship that we have, those of us lucky enough to have siblings. And it's a relation that's always interested in me, and I kind of watch the interaction between my kids, reflect back on my own relationship with my own siblings. And the relationship is sort of mined with all the great things that make fiction,
All the great things. And tell me what it's about without giving it away. I've read it.
Let's see, how do I do that? Okay, so the backbone of the book is these two children that we meet in the early 1950s, before all the wars.
Yes, Pari.
Pari, who's 3, and Abdullah, who's 10, and they're the children of this lowly villager who lives in a remote, impoverished village outside of Kabul. And the family is facing dire straits. They've already lost one baby to the winter. And the father takes the 2 kids to Kabul and makes a fateful decision in order to save his family. And that decision that the father makes splits these 2 children apart, and they absolutely love each other. They're very close.
Yes, and the
he
young
in fact
girl
sells one of the children to a wealthy couple in Kabul. And then the great question hanging over the rest of the novel is what happens to them. But the book also kind of branches out and looks like at a number of other characters whose lives are directly or indirectly affected by what happens to the kids. So the overall effect is that you get this one big story told in sort of these connected, overlapping vignettes.
And a 3-year-old child who is given away to a wealthy family, who as an adult knew in her soul that some part of her was missing. No one told her necessarily, but she knew in her soul there was more to her story.
That's one of the recurring themes in this book. People who sense that there's some essential element in their lives that's lacking. And this now middle-aged woman who was separated from her only brother, some 50 years earlier, senses that there's this absence in her life, that she's never fully understood the forces that have shaped her as a person. She feels incomplete, and that there's this longing for this reunion with this essential part of herself.
We all long for an examined life, as you know. An unexamined life is not worth living. Rumi, 13th century poet. You start, well, in the beginning, you quote Rumi, "Or beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." Why that?
I picked that, actually, I should say, my editor, Sarah McGrath, over at suggested, and she's immensely talented and was of great help to me in this book, this being one of the examples. I think that quote just captures so much of the ideas of moral ambiguity that are in this book. The Kite runner, for instance, I think is a very black and white in that there were good guys and there were bad guys. With this book, I think the mystery of sort of the human psyche is explored in a more nuanced way, I think it's about characters having contradictory impulses, characters who are capable of kindness and nobility and decency, and also of cruelty and pettiness. And we all are that mixture. None of us we all live in Rumi's field, really, all of us. And that's kind of where human existence
right doing and wrongdoing. And where is the line for us? And if we cross the line, do we really cross it? Interesting. You have said that you feel, even though this book is finished, it's never quite finished.
I think none of them are, and at some point you just have to stop. And that's why I'm loath to go back and read my old books, because my only impulse will be to edit.
To edit.
Like rewrite the whole thing.
Great writers edit, as you know. It's hard to throw things away.
It is. I love editing. I love it. I don't like writing the first draft, but I really love, once the first draft is there, I love going back and just kind of working on it.
I think it's John Irving. It is John Irving who, when he writes, he writes the last sentence first.
I heard that.
He told me that.
Yeah, I heard that.
It's an odd process.
He
knows how it's going to end.
You
sort of.
Yeah, and that's the exact opposite of what I do. I have no idea what I'm writing, where it's going, how it's going to end, how it's all going to work out. It's just a big leap of faith. It is for him too, because he knows the ending, but he just has a leap of faith to know, I'm going to get there.
Sure. Did you read Owen Meany? Have you read Irving?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and I'm always so surprised by how many different approaches there are to writing, and no two writers have given me the same response, and what their process is so different.
Oh, well, you gave up doctoring.
Yeah,
enough of gastro reflux and intestinal flu.
Yes, I did. In fact, 9 years ago yesterday, it was in my last day of work as a physician.
What do you miss about doctoring?
Well, I love being, in one sense, in that I never woke up in the morning and felt like, what do I do? What I do is so meaningless. That was never a problem. And I had, people entrusted me with their health, and I was, I miss some of my patients, I miss a lot of my colleagues, but I don't miss the regimented life. I don't think I was ever entirely happy being a doctor. And it wasn't with a heavy heart that I walked away.
And that is a very honest thing to say, because I've talked to lawyers who always wanted to be a lawyer, and they get into law in a big firm, and they don't like it.
They don't like it, but it's always funny, because if a lawyer walks away, people say, good for you. If you quit medicine, it's like, you're letting people down.
Right, and your patients are mad.
My mother was upset,
Really?
She was.
Your wife?
No, my wife was supportive, but my mom was a little anxious at first.
My son, the writer?
Yeah, my son, the doctor, sounded really good. And I said, I'm going to leave. And then she was like, I don't know. I've been to Costco and they don't have you booked, so I don't know
So
whether
what's
this
the
is going to
deal?
work out for you.
So global international fame. What's it like? Literary fame, global international literary
It
fame.
just never feels like there is such a thing, because being a writer is a very anonymous thing. I live a normal life. I walk on this. I go anywhere I want.
Right.
People have no
Don't
idea who
stop
you are.
you and ask
Well,
for your
no.
autograph.
If you're sort of a,
George Clooney.
no, Clooney, no, a big player in a soap opera, or if you once were in a singing competition, people will flock at you at Starbucks. But you could be Philip Roth and walk down the street, no one knows who you are. It's wonderful because it's a great kind of anonymity.
And perhaps more people watch The Young and the Restless than read Philip Roth.
Well,
Perhaps.
I think the numbers bear you out.
It's a secret that I watch The Young and the Restless. Keep that, will you?
Okay.
So the
We are
next
on
one.
TV,
I know.
Okay.
And the next book, is it fermenting, fomenting, bubbling?
It's in that kind of stage. I haven't decided yet.
Okay, do you have a title first, or do you put that on
No,
last?
this
How
title,
does it work?
it came last. I mean, it came literally at the 11th hour.
And the mountains echoed
And the mountains
what?
echoed. Yeah, and the mountains echoed. It's from a William Blake poem called A Nurse's Song. And it's a poem about childhood. And I was looking for poems about childhood. And I love that line. And I love the idea of the echo because, because that initial event in the book, the rupture of the bond between this boy and his sister, just echoes throughout the generations, throughout time and the continents, and it just keeps coming back what happened there. And a lot of the themes are echoed, a lot of the motifs are echoed right off from the very beginning. So I just felt it was evocative, and we changed hills to mountains because of Afghanistan as mountains.
Yes, I understand. And the hills are alive.
The hills are alive.
I can't use that. Oh, nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Thank
you
you
very much.
Thank you. Khaled Hosseini, The Kite Runner, 1,000 Splendid Suns, and The Mountains Echoed. Thanks for gracing us, Khaled, and thank you for watching Shaw TV and being here with us today, and many more inspiring guests to come.